Thanks everyone for coming tonight. So I'm Edward Chiu. People call me Ed. I'm the research and design lead and artist at ManvsMachine LA. And I do want to say personally, thank you so much, Deborah from Houdini School, for inviting me for this talk. And thank you so much, Steven, for introducing me to Deborah. Otherwise, this wouldn't happen at all. And also a huge thank you to ManvsMachine team, Kyle, Ellie, and Chad for saying yes to hold this event in our office. It means a lot to me. And so I'm going to start off with playing my show wheel first, and then we'll go from there. All right. Thank you, guys. For those of you who are not familiar with ManvsMachine, we are a multidimensional creative company specialized in the fields of design, film, and visual arts. That's what the owner says. But for real though, ManvsMachine has always been an inspiration to me, and to me has always been a branding and like very motion design focused studio. So our headquarters is in London, and our LA office opened in 2018, I believe. Here's a little job description. So every artist in MVSM, I need to create as much beautiful visuals as possible. Then also, I like as a research and design lead, I have to explore technical stuff and just stuff as much technical knowledge as my head as possible. So for this, I need to give a big shout out to our head of Houdini, Nathan Sims, because without his generosity of sharing all the Houdini knowledge to me, I wouldn't get as far as now. Then, of course, lastly, is to have fun with Houdini, because if you're not having fun with your job, it's gonna be like tedious. The work is not gonna be good. So these are some of the fun stuff that I did. So as you can see, the frame on the left is actually a style frame shoewear designed by Remy. And then at the end of the project, Chad, our creative director, was like, hey, do you think you can animate this shoe for the case studies? And then I was like, sure. Then I just throw it to KineFX and added some secondary motion. That's it. Very simple. So let me talk about a little bit of my background too. I'm born and raised in Hong Kong. And I started off with this very small studio called Carbon. And I stayed 5.5 years in there. As a small studio, we only have 4 or 5 people back then. But the boss is the lady. I learned so much in there. It's hard to put into words. To give you an example, once I actually finished a 60 seconds good C4D animation by myself. Then he comes New York City. So I got this opportunity to work at PsyOp because they reached out to me. But of course, COVID happens. It's okay. Sometimes shit happens. You just need to roll with it. Then, just like you see all the pictures here, I'm having a really good time here in MVSM. These are some of the most talented and good-hearted people I've worked with. Not only worked with, but the people I've met. It's a huge honor to be surrounded by all these coworkers. Then the topic for tonight will be creating technical control for simulations in the perspective of a designer. It's a long title, yes, but I feel like the more accurate title would be how to solve technical problem in the perspective of a designer. Before we dive deep into Houdini, let me just say, personally, I think concepts and methodology/technique, they goes hand in hand with each other, because with such technical advance to like Houdini, once you are able to create some bespoke and unique visual language that is closely tied to the concept, it could really elevate the film and drive the narrative. First, we're going to talk about Dewars, and then we're going to talk about two commercial projects, and then two personal work. So let's start with Dewars. Dewars, they are a whiskey brand that they blended two different barrels into one. According to them, that creates a better taste whiskey versus the old-fashioned way, which I believe doesn't involve blending at all. But I'm not a whiskey drinker. Anyways, in this film, we transform a room from the old-fashioned design style to some very minimalistic modern room. We are going to use this as a metaphor for the transformation of from old to new. So I'm going to play this final output, and then, yeah. So sorry there's no sound for this one, but as you can see, it's a very polished output, I would say. I think it's pretty good too, not just because I worked on it. But it's really a team effort. We have Sasha, who worked on this beautiful interior design, and Xiaoxiang, who did some very good work lighting in Houdini. Then we also have Casco and Jakub, and of course Nathan for some Houdini help. But I want to say that I was pretty heavily involved since the beginning. So some of the concepts like this and the pedal transformation shot actually goes through to the final film. Part of it is because the client feel like this is closely related to their concept. So I'm gonna show some Houdini process of the middle shot, which is the pedal transformation shot, because once you understand how it was done, the previous and the next shot is just of the same concept. Firstly, you have a pedal, and then I have two mobs attribute here. One is called mask and mask D, which mask D is basically a slightly modified and delayed version of mask. Then inside this point pop thing, I have a displacement in there just to create a little bit of fake bulging effect. It's helpful when you try to blend between two states. And this is like the important part where I subtract mask D and mask attribute to get this rim, and then add some noise to it. Then I can use that to drive the rest length of the pressure constraint. So this is just some typical Vellum operations where you transfer the attribute that you need, and then you promote them to a primitive level. Then you can see that I have unlocked the Vellum solver here, which I'll explain to you in a minute. And inside here, I'm just importing all the attributes that I need, and added some noise and force to the mask inner area. Then after that, I modify the rest length of the pressure constraints. And in this solver, I was just blending between the simulated state and the rest state. I'm gonna explain to you why I unlock this Vellum solver. It's because I have to add another solver at the end of the chain, which basically is of the same operation, blending between the simulated state and the target rest state. Because as you can see, if I don't do that, it's not gonna blend 100% back to the target. Right. There you have it. I'm just showcasing some processes from start to finish. Like you can see, it has gone through a long way, like long processes of just like refining the simulation and stuff. This is the final. All right, and then let's go to the Fender project. I actually speed it up a little bit because there's some more good stuff later in the presentation. Fender reached out to us to make some key visuals for the 60th anniversary strat. So I don't know if you have seen the final movie, but they went with different directions. However, I still feel like the initial exploration is pretty fun. So I just want to share some of the processes. So initially, their internal design team wants to showcase this sunburst color, which have this beautiful gradient, and it's one of their very OG colorway. But at the same time, they also want to showcase all these different colors. Our project lead, Sasha, came up with this idea, and I believe maybe Eric too, which we just call it a pool of color. But the concept is we have this splash of explosion coming out from the center of the guitar. It's the guitar paint itself, right? And then at the edge of it, we have all these different color, like very thin color bands expanding outward. We feel like that would have, how do I put it? Really showcase or tell the concept of it. So immediately we came with this problem, which is like, how do we get all these very clean and crispy edges? Because with the ordinary method of transferring attributes from points to geometry, you're not gonna get like this very clean result. It's just because of like how the point information is being transferred to the mesh. It's no matter how powerful your computer is, no matter how dense of a mesh it can handle, you're still gonna get the texture it's gonna be still a little bit like blurry. So this is comparing the way of transferring attribute versus using texture. So my train of thought is like that. If we are using texture, then it means we need to use UV. Then since we are using texture, we should create our own texture, right? Because what is the point of doing that if we cannot have our own texture map? So it's gonna be using height fill and cops to do that. So the only problem that left is that we need to solve is if they could share the same UV space, meaning the flip source particles can share the same UV space with the texture that we are creating, we can use back the texture on the render. And sorry, I'm using the old cops here, because when we did this project in January this year, the new Houdini hadn't been released yet. All we need to have is to have this gradient coming from the center of a guitar shape, going towards the side of the grid. And with that, we can use a modulo function to get as many bands as we want. Then, so I started off with this little guitar shape that I draw, and then I shrank it a little bit. Then I was using this ISO offset node to get the SDF gradient, SDF volume. So one thing that is like handy with this ISO offset node is you can really offset the gradient super easily, and you can control the size of the gradient very easily too. And here I'm just showcasing what is inside the attribute bulb, which, as you can see, it's as simple as it gets. It's just add and multiply. As you can see, we are still at point level here, right? And I'm doing all this in point level first because it's more intuitive to do that versus when you get into cops. And to me, it's faster to preview too, because the old cops sometimes it's a little bit slow. So here, as you can see in the fob cop to view the thing, I was just basically referencing all the stuff that I have done at point level. So here I'm just even like just copy and paste relative reference for the color. Yeah, so that I can change the color in real time. And for some reason, cops is pretty fast here. Oh, and it's also super useful to output this normal map too, because you can use this normal map to get some bevel in Redshift, which really helps for the fluid to look more realistic. And this one is just like a proof of concept of the UV space thing. So I just want to show that once you have the same size value in the UV project node, I'm using like 5 here. And when you have the same value on the height field too, same size too, you are gonna have the UV matching. Cool. So this is just to show you a little bit of the flip simulation, but it's super barebone because it's just basically having the velocity pointing outward and then adding some noise to it. Nothing really special. Even, yeah, you see, I'm just adding some particle separations, surface tension, and that's pretty much it. Then here you go, you have this texture that, we just generated and will adhere to the simulation. And then for this one, I just want to showcase some of the other tests that I did, which uses the same method of creating the texture in height field and cops. And it's inspired by the beautiful guitar work, bodywork of the paint. So this one is similar to, but there's just this tricky part for this one though, is that we have to get this gradient across all the layers that we have. So in this for each thing, I'm just telling Houdini to, hey, please delete any layers that are not of this iteration. And then for the current iteration that we are processing, the current layer that we are processing, can we divide this value by the total number of layers? As a result, we are gonna get this gradient of attribute starting from 0 to 1 to the height field. And then we can use this to fit into the Redshift color ramp to create all these different colors. All right, let's move forward to the personal work part. It's called metallic hair. Let me play. Yeah. Okay. Then I'll go forward. So if you have ever tried to research on some metal behavior, if you want to do some cool shit with metal, you're gonna came across this almost metallic metal and the magnet reaction thing. So it's pretty interesting to me as a Houdini designer because it's like stepping across a different area of Houdini where the structure itself, it's formed by particles, but if you look at the animation behavior, it behaves like hair. It's like pointy, it's stiff, and it has all this erratic motion. So I was like, this is gonna be pretty fun to solve. How do we move the hair? And obviously, you're gonna start with a bunch of hair, which you can just generate easily from hair gen. Technically, I was like, maybe I can just copy to points a bunch of lines too. But very soon I realized that it's much better to use hair because you can control the length of the hair so easily with attributes. And also you can comb the hair too, right? Here I'm just like pointing it inward because it's the easiest thing to do and I'm a lazy person. Yeah, and then add a little bit of band to give it some variation. Before we move forward to the simulation, I just want to explain the concept of this thing a little bit. To me, it looks like the hair, they are just going upward, right? But the tricky part is to have the scale with respect to each hair's rotation, like their own axis, right? Because we don't want the hair to scale blindly on y-axis. And it also appears to me that we need an attribute that keeps accumulating over time so that it doesn't stop, it doesn't at it's 0 to 1 and then it stops. We want the hair to grow continuously. Let me grab some water first. Cool. How do we create this accumulating attribute? Again, using the grid and schedule some points on it. Here, I'm just using the mobs thing again, just to have some attribute going from center to outward. And then in this solver thing, I'm just telling Houdini to increase the attribute over time. And then once we transfer like this scroll attribute back to the hair, we have a problem here. As you can see, we have all sort of gradients here, and we don't want that because we don't want the hair, for example, to grow more at on the top part and then last in the second part. In the bottom part, we want the hair to grow in a uniform manner, meaning we want each strand of hair to get the root point attribute like that. And then here comes the magic part. Once you are done with this, you are like 90% done with the thing. What I do here is I'm just blasting out all the points except the bottom one, the roots. And then I feed the position attribute into the make transform thing. I'm feeding it into the pivot, by the way. And you guys remember we just created this A attribute which keeps accumulating, right? We are gonna feed it to the scale so that it can grow continuously. Yep. Then I decided to feed it to the Phantom still because I want some more natural and realistic behavior out of it. Pin to target is a constraint that we always use. And here I'm just telling Houdini, hey, if the A attribute is bigger, can you please follow the guide animation more? Can you please follow the scale animation more? And if this stiffness scale attribute is lower, can you enable more natural behavior of the hair to come through? So after all this, it's just all touch up. And as you can see, the reason that we are using hair here, because it comes with so much flexibility. You can scale up. You can have as many hairs as you want. And so that means you can have less hair right from the start, meaning your simulation could be like almost like lower res, and it could be less heavy, and it comes with so much free attributes too, which you can use the guide processes on. And for the points, I'm just using this resample node to get the points. And these points are later fed into instances. We can have these little rocks particles on it. Then this point deform is just to conform the points back to their respective parent, to their respective hair. Because you see, I have a class attribute here. All right. Then after this, it's just more touch-ups, like final touch-up, randomizing P scales and all that. So, yeah, then there you have it. Okay, thank you so much, guys. It's not ending yet, but I just want to say thank you for holding on. Because I know maybe it's a lot of information and I have to go through it in a very fast pace because I want to go through as much work as possible. So this is called Infinity Pool. I have always found this concept of impossible physics very interesting because you have Houdini that can create all the physically accurate simulations, and I feel with that you can twist the reality a little bit in 3D space, meaning you can do some impossible stuff in 3D. Right. I actually started from the left side, that cube on the left. Originally, the waves are only gonna go from left to, but soon after I finished that, I realized wouldn't it be more interesting if I have different directions of the waves coming from behind to the front? And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm just like intrigued by this idea. I like the idea that the waves are coming from nowhere and then it also dissipates to nowhere. So this is the overview of the setup. As some of you guys might have guessed it already, I'm doing that in UV space. And then I used a bunch of ocean tools to create the waves. Then after that, I feed it to the SOP flip solver, which is super handy, by the way, if you want to do this kind of ocean stuff. And then I add the whitewater solver afterwards, restore the transform, and then I store the parametric UVs with reference to the UV space that I was feeding it in, and then we start it back to the 3D space where this script actually lives. Oh, let me go back a little bit. Right, as you can see, I have some island number here that I defined with the class, the connectivity thing. So the top island is 5, and then the left island is 0. So the right island is 3. So this information is going to be useful when we go forward. So why I mentioned this is because we want all 3 of these islands to merge into one. We want to create a seamless island that we can put our simulation on, so that the waves can come in all directions, and the simulation can go over from one island to each other. So this is the UV layout that I come up with after a bunch of trial and error. You cannot see the polylines very clearly here, but I believe if it's recorded, you can always see it back on the screen. I actually scale the workspace up a little bit for the flip simulation to work on, because it just behaves more naturally in a larger scale. And as you can see here, just with the ocean tools, I'm able to iterate the number of waves, and then the speed of the waves, even the shape of the waves. And then you can just use this ocean evaluate tool to preview it very accurately, I would say. And this is the simulated result that I got. It's good and all, but there's a tricky part here, because this is a narrow band sim, so that Houdini trying to save up some memory and resources, so that we are only getting the top layer, which is active. So as a result, we actually need to get back the bottom part too. But it's actually pretty easy, because like Houdini included this volume representation of the simulation, so we can just use point from volume to generate back, and then transfer back the attribute from the simulated layer. And as you can see, I've also added a whitewater solver here. Then it's just storing the parametric UV with reference to the UV island that we were working on in UV space, and then I restart it back to the 3D space. So I've also stored a distance attribute that allows me to play with the height of the waves later in the chain, which I think is pretty useful and handy. And there you have it. People ask, like, why would you put some fire on the ocean? But I think with Houdini, it's just because you can. So that's all for my presentation. Happy simulating, guys.